Hello again. Today we're going to be taking a look at a device that Verizon sent me a few weeks back. This is the Samsung Galaxy Note 2, again from Verizon Wireless. First up, some specs on the device. This is a 5.55 inch, if I remember correctly, 1280 by 720 Super AMOLED display. It's rocking a 1.6 gigahertz Exynos quad-core processor. I believe it's specifically the Exynos 4412. 2 gigabytes of RAM. This one specifically has 16 gigabytes of internal storage. They do come in 32 and 64 gigs of storage also. It has a massive 3100 milliamp hour battery, an expandable micro SD card slot, which will take, if I remember correctly, up to 64 gigs of micro SD storage. So on the maximum, you could have 64 plus internal 64 being 128 gigs of built-in storage. Has a front-facing 1.9 megapixel 720p video capturing camera and a 8 megapixel rear-facing camera that's capable of 1080p video. And also, as per the usual with the Samsung Galaxy Note type devices, it comes with the S Pen. You have a traditional micro USB port on the bottom, you've got the 3.5mm headphone jack on the top, the volume rocker on the left-hand side, and the power button on the right-hand side. And in terms of form factor and function, that's pretty much all there is to it. And now moving on to the actual review of the unit. This device came running Jelly Bean version 4.1.1, so of course it is completely blazing fast. When you combine that quad-core processor with the 2 gigs of RAM and Jelly Bean, performance is just amazing. The TouchWiz UI on top of it, normally I see some issues out of TouchWiz just in terms of performance and responsiveness. On Jelly Bean, on 4.1.1, on this ridiculously powerful device, no issues, no lagging, no stuttering, nothing. Completely fast all of the time. The little bit of gaming that I did on it as well, absolutely no problems. I played things from Minecraft, which played completely smoothly, to the Asphalt 6 racing game, which I picked up on one of the 10-cent sales a little while back that they had on the Play Store. Fruit Ninja, of course, was very clean, very smooth. And Dead Trigger, the game that came with my Nexus 7, played amazingly smooth. Which is, of course, to be expected. Quad-core device, 2 gigs of RAM, loads and loads of power there. If you did not play these things very well, something would be terribly, terribly wrong. In terms of phone calling, call quality, and sound in general, I didn't make a whole ton of phone calls with it. The few that I did make sounded very nice. Was not exactly amazing or anything, but that could be a product of the other end of the line or the area that I was making the phone calls from. In terms of the sound quality of the external speaker, the one that you'd use when you're playing games or watching videos, everything sounded just fine. Didn't sound really tinny or anything. It was loud enough for what I wanted it to be. Coming from the original Galaxy Nexus, I'm used to having a speaker that's not particularly powerful, so this was definitely a nice change of pace, and it was not quite as powerful as the one that came in the Motorola devices like the Razer HD or the Razer Max HD that I just recently reviewed. So it was kind of a good in the middle for me. It wasn't completely overpowering and it wasn't completely too soft. It was just right. In terms of the network, that's sort of going to depend on where you're living. Where I am, we have excellent 4G coverage, so everything was very, very fast. In order to play the Asphalt game, I had to download about a 600 megabyte file just to make the game play. I started it, and I think it was a minute and a half later it was done. That's on our 4G connection, which is, again, ridiculously fast here. On a whim here, I decided to go ahead and do a quick one-off test. Went to the Cincinnati server, which is not exactly close, but it's not terribly far away. It's about an hour and a half, 2-hour drive from here. I got 27 megabits per second down on 4G and almost 7 megabits a second up. So speeds are definitely just about where they ought to be. I've seen faster before, I've seen slower. A lot of that could have to do with more people using the network. It being just a few days after Christmas, you're gonna have a lot more people using their brand new 4G devices on the network. In terms of the display itself, big, beautiful, bright, very nice for consuming content on. If you want to play games on it, like I said, very fast, very nice. If you want to watch videos on it, I don't know what videos I'm going to be able to show. Maybe I'll pull up one of my own. They look just fine. I mean, it depends on the content you're watching, of course. If you're watching a Blu-ray rip on it, yeah, it's going to look pretty nice. Of course, the screen being 720p, you're not going to get anything higher than 720p on it, but you can watch that high-quality content and have no stuttering, no frame rate issues. Very, very fast device. I cannot say that enough. In terms of battery life, again, amazing. 3100 milliamp hours. That means you can just use it all day long, have no issues. I think routinely I was using it for about 2 days at a time. Pretty hardcore usage of it. And I'm not a hard user, but you know, using it for email and gaming and browsing and just all the traditional stuff I would do. no issues with battery life. And the time that I had it when I let it just sit for a couple of days and just very minimally used it, 4 days, and I was down to about 40% battery life, maybe 30% battery life, and 4 full days of using it very little here and there. So that's pretty much standby time. So if you need to have it there just as a, if there's an emergency or something and you have to have a device stay on where you can occasionally check email or you can occasionally make a phone call, that's an option, I suppose. But just for everyday stuff, you can definitely make it through a full day. You can make it probably through a day and a half to 2 days of decent usage with no real issues, and that's without having an extended battery. I don't know if the Galaxy Note 2 even has an extended battery option available, but it is definitely very sleek, very thin, so I would hope there's not an extended battery because that would sort of deform the form factor of it. Moving on to the cameras. The cameras are something I always like to touch on. Front-facing camera, very decent quality video. Rear-facing camera, even better quality video. I'm pretty sure it zooms in just a little bit for that 1080p video on the rear-facing camera. That's just the way that I've seen a lot of these devices do it. The audio quality out of it is a little bit tinny and muffled and kind of weird, but it could definitely be worse. I mean, it is still a cell phone camera, and you're getting very decent quality video. There is a clip I took where I added it to the end of an XDA video, and people noticed the quality of the audio, but the video quality was very, very admirable. I'll try to run out and take some snapshots real quick around here. We had some snow, and I'm going to see what I can capture with it very quickly to include in this area, so hopefully you're getting to see some of that. This is a quick test of the front-facing camera, just standing outdoors, and I heard somebody yelling at me. Moving around a little bit. I think I've got the anti-shake turned on, but either way, it's such a large device that it may not really be an issue. Video quality looks pretty decent at this point. And I guess the last thing to touch on just a little bit here is the S Pen. That's really one of the big selling features of the device. This one is a larger S Pen. It's slightly different from the previous Notes S Pen, and it's supposed to have 1024 levels of pressure sensitivity. Personally, I'm not really an artist. I did do a little bit of work with the built-in S Pen stuff, just drawing, writing, things like that, and it worked admirably, and it was usable. It was fine. It's kind of an odd length for trying to do any writing, but with my hand, it fits okay. It's not, I mean, any longer, and it really wouldn't fit inside the device, so I guess that's about as good as they could make it. One thing I will say about the S Pen, I actually tested it while I was playing games just to see what it would do, if anything. And while you're using the S Pen, multi-touch goes out the window. So keep that in mind. If you're wanting to use this kind of like a Nintendo DS or something, it's not gonna work like that. For a game like Fruit Ninja, where it's a one-handed swiping game, yeah, that's great. Works amazingly well. For anything else, anything that requires 2 fingers, like Minecraft or Asphalt or Dead Trigger, as soon as the stylus comes anywhere near the screen, the S Pen comes near the screen, your other finger stops working. So I was playing Dead Trigger, I think, and I was moving my thumb around, and then all of a sudden I put the stylus on with my other hand, and I kept moving forward, and I couldn't control it anymore with my other hand. So I had to put the stylus away before I could do anything. Not actually put it away, but pull it away from the screen. Now, one of the cool things about the stylus, and I think this might just be unique to the Note 2, do feel free to correct me if I'm wrong there, it has a hover feature where you can put it near the screen and you can actually see a little area where you're going to be touching, so you can hover over things without actually having to touch on the screen. And it just lets you know what you're going to do, where you're going to touch. Kind of a useful feature. I mean, really, I could see this being a useful tool for offices if you want to capture signatures, for artists because of the 1024 pressure sensitivity levels, really just for everyday note-taking stuff, for classes and such. Definitely very useful. For me, not so much so, simply because that sort of gets to the last point. It's very, very large. A 5.5-inch screen, really, really big. It will still fit in a pocket. Normally the pocket I use is one of the carpenter pants pockets on the side of my jeans, and it fits very nicely in there. I actually was able to fit it in there with the Samsung Galaxy Nexus and had no issues, so that's definitely admirable. I mean, it is still too big to fit into a traditional pants pocket with comfort, but especially if you're a lady with tight pants or a guy who wears very tight jeans, that would be very awkward. If you're carrying it in a purse, not an issue. If you are comfortable carrying something in a back pocket, that's also fine. Just 5.5-inch display is very, very big to try to fit in a pocket, and also a little bit too big to try to use one-handed. As you can probably see here, if I am holding it comfortably and I move my thumb around, I cannot really reach there we go. Cannot really reach the top of the display without wobbling around quite a bit. I can do it, but just barely, and my hands are of decent size. They're not huge, they're not tiny, and a little too big for me. I would not throw that out as a reason for not buying it. If you like the smaller devices, though, it is a little too big for that. My dad has the Galaxy Note 1, and it's quite big as well, but for somebody like him who needs a little bit larger device to be able to see it and be able to control it easily, something like this is very, very nice. Very thin, decently light, extraordinarily powerful, huge, beautiful, bright display. For content consumption, content creation, anything like that, this is an amazing device to have. I cannot say enough good things about it. And honestly, because of the work I do over at XDA, XDA has loads and loads of stuff you can do with it. One thing I did forget to mention is the multitasking. You can have multiple apps running on it at the same time. There's a little bar over on the right-hand side that pops out, and you can drag and drop things to the top and bottom of the screen and have 2 apps running at the same time. Also have that pop-out window on top of it. So in theory, you can have at least 3 applications running on the screen at the same time. Interesting, not extraordinarily useful in my opinion, but the problem is the apps that are built in that you can choose from to multitask with, there's only about 7 of them. That's not terribly useful. However, if you root the device and you do a little bit of extra work to it, you can make some tweaks so that you can add whatever apps you want to that. There's tutorials over at XDA. That's the other thing. This specific device, the Verizon Galaxy Note 2, there's been a load of development work done on it recently. I'm not sure what in terms of ROMs, but unlocking, rooting, just tweaks and such, there's been a lot of that done in the very recent past. So if you want, go check out the threads over on XDA developers, simply because there's so much out there to read about it and to learn about it. So yeah, overall, summing things up, this has been a long video so far. If you are in the market for a device, this is the flagship device to be going for, except for the fact that it's not going to be running the absolute latest and greatest version of Android. It's running 4.1.1, and I believe there's a CyanogenMod 10.1 alpha/beta in progress, so it will be running 4.2.1 pretty soon, but not quite yet, and definitely not officially yet. If you want a device that has a stylus, this is probably the best one on the market to get, simply because big screen, lots and lots of real estate for using that stylus. And of course, if you're consuming lots of content, lots of videos on YouTube, lots of gaming, lots of video creation even, this would be a great device to have. Cannot say that enough. One of the most powerful devices you can get your hands on, excellent battery life, excellent performance. So for me, it's definitely a buy, but I am not in the market to buy at the moment, so I'm going to be returning it to Verizon here in the next half hour or so. Anyway, that I think is going to be all for me for today. If there's anything I forgot, I am completely unscripted on this, so I'm just doing a lot of this from memory. If there's anything I forgot, do feel free to let me know in the comment section down below. If you like this video, do make sure to give it a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button down below if you want to be notified whenever I put out new content. Definitely always appreciate the new subscriptions. But as always, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.